So I don't really do freelancing that often, but sometimes people will reach out to me and just ask if I could maybe build something on the side. Maybe they saw my YouTube channels and they see that I know how to build stuff with websites, and they'll reach out with email and say, "Hey, can you build, X, Y, and Z?" Most of the times I ignore those emails. I have done one in the past, and I do want to talk about the process that I like to do when I do any type of freelancing. How do I get paid for the work I'm doing, and how do I estimate how much all this work will be? A talking point will be this little application that I actually built for a friend of my wife who needs a glass installation website for their company that they're working on. So I built all this with Next.js and Tailwind. We have a nice about our services section that talks about their business. Got some images talking about the type of things that they do. They do commercial and residential constructions, the counties that they service. I made this little map in GIMP, highlighted some counties, drew a little arrow here. And I did this for search engine optimization. I want to make sure that if someone asks for glass installation in Miami, that they would show up, hopefully. Also got a little contact us. Obviously, I omitted the names so I don't dox them. We got a gallery section. So this is where I have some various images of the work that they've done. So the first question is, how much would I charge for a page like this, a single page website? How much do you think it would be worth charging as a web developer to build this out for a client? Okay, and I actually reached out to Twitter to kind of get more information about how much would other people charge. My initial thoughts was this is about a $300, $500 project, right? For someone who live in the US, the amount of time it would take to first gather the requirements to understand what the client needs. Then you got to make sure that they have pictures. Sometimes they don't even have pictures, and you have to go and tell them, okay, well, you have to go get pictures because I can't make a site to promote your business if you don't provide me any pictures. Luckily, this client provided me text. They said, I want, the homepage. We have a slogan. I want the slogan to be displayed somewhere. We have a homepage. This is our core business values. Here's some information about what we do. Here are the different types of things that they did. All this information was given to me in an email, and I just made it look a little bit nicer, right? I found the images that matched storefront frames, and I just put it in a nice little card here. I asked them what counties they service, and I made this little map in GIMP. Okay, they gave me their contact information. I put this down here, and then also all the images. So overall, this took me maybe 3 hours to build with Next.js and Tailwind. A lot of this stuff you could probably do in a lot less time if this is your niche that you're really good at. Maybe you can use something like Webflow and you can knock this out in 20, 30 minutes. But I will say, just communicating with the client back and forth and getting the information you need, that alone is going to take up a lot of your time. So make sure you charge accordingly to how much time you think this client is going to require from you. And then also charge based on the value you think a website will provide the client. For example, what I mean by charge by value, okay? So if they're a glass installation company, you have to think how much, if they can land one client from the website I'm building them, how much should I charge them to make some type of profit for that first client that they make? So technically a site like this, based on the industry that they're in, I think a site like this will go for a couple thousand. And I think I actually talked to the client and they mentioned that they were getting quotes for a couple thousand for building a one-page site like this. Personally, this is a family friend, so I'm not charging anything. I'm just doing it for fun, making some content out of it. So I don't want to go down and show people's names on Twitter who responded. But I will say that some people said that, hey, they charge $600 base, and then for every additional page that was added, they charge $300 on top of that. Since this is a single page, I mean, maybe $600 is in your price range. Other people said that they wouldn't charge less than $1,000 or $2,000 for a site like this, and that you should value your time. But honestly, that boils down to you and your needs and how quick it would be to kind of build out this site. Additionally, if you're providing hosting and updates in the future for their site, like if you're not using a CMS, then they'd have to keep on contacting you if you want to update emails or contact information, stuff like that. So you have to kind of factor all that in. Now, I will say, before I even started building a site, I did look into just using WordPress. DigitalOcean has a cool way to just set up an entire WordPress solution on a VM. Has a database set up for you. It has PHPMyAdmin. It has the WordPress set up. I started going down that path and then looking up themes, but I just realized that most of these themes are there's just too much. There's just too much information. My client just wanted a single page, and that is it. And most of these themes, I think, just kind of went outside of that scope, right? So I kind of weighed that into my considerations about do I want to use WordPress? A CMS would be nice for my client, but they don't need one. They didn't ask for one. But I would probably charge more If they wanted a CMS and they wanted the ability to log in and change this stuff as needed, then yeah, I'd probably charge more, because learning how to set up WordPress, learning how to do these themes, these plugins, learning how to get that deployed out and how to make sure that your servers don't crash on them also takes time and experience. So adding more stuff on is just going to increase the costs that you charge your client. But I decided to just use Next.js because that is what I'm good with. That is what I know. And Tailwind as well has a bunch of sites that you can just copy and paste components in. Like I believe this entire hero banner was copied from like Flowbyte, and I just changed some stuff. And the background, subtle background, was also just from another site that I found. So like, there's methods out there to like build sites like this with very little effort and very little time, and you can charge a decent amount for sites like this. All right, my second thing I want to talk about is how do I actually charge my clients? Personally, I do stuff hourly. Okay, most people probably want a finalized bullet point list of like how much is this website going to cost me. I personally don't do it that way. If someone reaches out to me from one of my YouTube videos and says, hey, can you build this for me? I'll tell them my hourly rate, and then I'll ask, okay, what is the first couple features you want to start with? And I'll give them an estimate for those features. For a one-page application like this, like you can obviously gauge how long this is going to take you if you built this before, and you can give them an upfront price of this will be a total of $500, right? But if it's something larger, maybe there's some type of like a Google Maps that you have to hook into. Maybe there's some type of database. There's authentication. There's social media logins. Maybe there's a way for people to communicate and chat with each other inside the application. Every feature that a client asks for, what I'll do is I'll make a card in Trello for that feature. And then I will itemize every feature, right? Every feature, I'll say this will be about 3 or 4 hours of my time to implement for you. And then I'll translate that to my hourly rate. And that's how much I will charge them. And what I do is I kind of set those up as deliverables. So like, let's say the first set of deliverables will be a landing page, the ability for someone to register, and the ability for someone to log in, right? That's the first set of deliverables. Maybe I'll say that take us about 3 to 4 hours to build. And after I build it, I'll go ahead and get it deployed somewhere on like a staging environment or like a fake URL. I'll send that URL to them. I don't give them the code yet. I don't give them access to the code, but I give them the URL and I say, hey, is this good? And then any feedback they're willing to give me, they can give me feedback on the login, the homepage, or the registration, but that's it. We don't move on to other features until those 3 things have been polished up. The client's happy with them. And when the client is happy, I'll say, okay, well, here's your invoice. This is how much you owe me for those pages that I worked on. This is how much time it took me. If I go over in time, sometimes I'll actually invoice them and say, hey, this actually took me a lot longer than I thought it would. This is how much the invoice is. As long as you made it apparent that like you just gave an estimate, right? Those 3 features you added were just an estimate. I may go under, I may go over, right? So that's what I like to do. If client doesn't want to work with me like that, then I just won't work with them. I'm not going to give them an upfront huge estimate on like their entire project. I'll just work on some deliverables. I'll estimate how much time it'll take, how much money it'll take to do that set of features. And then when they pay me for that deliverable, then we'll start talking about deliverable set 2. I'll talk with the client. I'll say, hey, what are the next most important things that you want to build out? Because obviously a lot of these clients have budgets, right? They can only spend so much money on this application. And I'm also not going to do work for free, right? I'm not going to build out this entire application for you and not get paid for it. So I want to make sure that every step of the way, I'm getting some type of payment up front. Usually I ask for 70% up front. And then after the set of deliverables are done, I'll ask for that remaining 30%. And then we'll move on to deliverable 2, where we'll plan out what the client wants, what is the most important things that they want added, how much do I think it's going to cost, give me that 70% up front. I'll work on it. I'll get it deployed somewhere. They review it, get some feedback back and forth, do a little bit of polishing, a little bit of tweaks. And when deliverable 2 is done, I'll ask for that 30%. Keep doing that process. That's what works for me. I mainly do it because I want to protect my time. I do not want to do work and not get paid for it. So I ask for money up front, obviously. And if you have more trust with the client you're talking to, then they'll be more willing to pay you up front. And that's why I think the deliverables help with that, because you're saying, hey, you just have to invest a small amount for this small set of features. And as you keep shipping these deliverables on time and like the client's impressed with how fast you're shipping stuff, how good it looks, then they'll like be more willing to just like trust you and do this and give you the money up front because they know that you want to work on this and you're actually going to finish the job. All right, the third thing I want to talk about is how do I actually communicate with the client? And one thing that I actually did on another project was we just had a Kanban board, right? So I'll say like deliverable one. Um, and I will share this board with the client. The client will come in and add the cards that he wants added to deliverable one, like the features. And I will just basically set up a doing column to test and then done. Okay. Done. Now, the reason this worked really well, I'm sorry about this background. How do I remove this background? So the way this worked really well for me and this one client is that we both have access to this board. He can come in and say, I need a ability for a user to log in. Okay. Ability for a user to delete their account. And he'll just keep adding stuff to this deliverable lists. Maybe we'll have a backlog too, where he knows that there's other features that he wants. And as he's thinking about those features, he can add them over here, some other feature we will need. Okay. So at some point, we'll get enough of these kind of set up. And we'll say, okay, I'm going to go ahead and estimate how much time it'll take for me to do all this. And I will send that invoice to you for that upfront 70%. And the cool thing about this is we can actually just talk in real time. So if I have any questions about the deliverable, I'll be like, what do you actually want by this? Social media logins, question mark. Okay. And Trello will actually send notifications to your email account, and your client can come and actually start responding to the things that you're asking about. And the great thing about this is that all of these features, the conversations can happen directly in the cards themselves. So you have context of like what people are talking about. I personally don't like communicating with email, especially if the project is larger, because you end up talking about all these various points. Like you might be having this huge email chain of 50 emails and just very hard to manage. So I would rather do this approach. And what happens is as we decide on the deliverables, I'll go ahead and just pull those all in as I'm working on them so he can kind of see the progress I'm making. As I'm doing stuff, again, I can leave comments and he can respond to them. And at some point, I'm going to say, hey, this feature is ready to test. It's actually deployed somewhere. Go and check it out. And if it's good, go ahead and move it to done for me. Or if not, move it back to doing, and I'll go and I'll address whatever feedback. If he has feedback, he can just leave comments here. You can also do labels here. Needs feedback given, like that. You can go ahead and like create labels. I like doing this just so like I can tell that a client has addressed this. It's been moved back to the doing column, but he gave feedback. Like you could just make another like flow, I guess. You could say feedback, and the client could just move it back to feedback. Just for me, I know that it's something that I worked on. It just needs to be fixed up a little bit to make the client happy. And then at some point, you'll move all these cards to done, and then you'll move on to the next set of deliverables that hopefully he's been kind of stacking up, queuing up, that you can start estimating and stuff like that. So yeah, that's how I like to do freelancing. Again, my approach might not align with a lot of other people out there, but personally, that's how I like doing it. So yeah, if you have a special approach that you like to do when you're freelancing, leave a comment below so other people can kind of understand your process. But overall, I don't work full time as a freelancer. I work at a company. So a lot of this stuff is out of my realm. I just do what works best for me. And if a client isn't on board with my requirements, then I won't do the work for them. Okay. All right, well, other than that, I have a Discord channel you guys are welcome to join. Feel free to click on the link in the description, and have a good day and happy coding.